Sometimes the greatest betrayal isn't a sudden knife in the back. It's the slow, silent poison of words whispered behind closed doors. We think we know the people we love, until we catch them laying bare a truth that shatters everything we built. I still remember the exact moment my world collapsed. It wasn't dramatic like in the movies, no thunderstorms, no dramatic music, just the soft evening light filtering through the blinds of our mountain cabin, the distant sound of birds, and my husband's voice coming from the porch, low, intimate, passionate, in a way he hadn't spoken to me in years. "I've been fighting this for so long, Jessica. I can't anymore. When we're in the same room, I can barely breathe." My cousin Jessica, my favorite cousin, the one who had been staying with us for the summer to heal her broken heart. The irony doesn't escape me. Even now I stood frozen in the hallway, my hands still gripping the grocery bags. I'd come back early from the store because they didn't have the wine Mark had asked for, his favorite Merlot for our anniversary dinner that night, our 15-year anniversary. "Mark, we can't," I heard Jessica whisper, but her protest sounded weak, rehearsed. "Think about Rachel." My name in their mouths felt like a violation. I should have stormed out there. I should have screamed, thrown things, made a scene, but something kept me rooted to that spot. Listening as if by staying perfectly still, I could somehow prevent what was happening from being real. A hot wave of nausea surged up from my stomach, so fierce it made my knees buckle. My breath came in short, ragged gasps as if the air itself had turned thick and poisonous. I clenched the grocery bag so tightly the plastic bit into my palms, the pain sharp but not enough to pull me back to reality. My mind screamed to run, to confront them, yet every muscle refused to obey, frozen by the horrifying realization that the man I loved was laying bare his desire for someone I trusted, like a sister. My ears rang with each word they spoke, each syllable driving a fresh dagger of betrayal deeper into my chest. "Rachel doesn't understand me anymore," Mark continued, his voice taking on that self-pitying tone I'd grown to recognize over the years. "She's so consumed with her career, with being perfect. We haven't really connected in years, but with you it's different. You see me." I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. 15 years, 2 children, a mortgage, family vacations, hospital visits, birthday celebrations, all of it reduced to, "She doesn't understand me." "What about the business? Your families are connected through it," Jessica said. "It's complicated, but I've been thinking about it. There are ways." A glass slipped from my numb fingers then, shattering on the wooden floor. The conversation outside abruptly stopped. I couldn't run, couldn't hide the evidence of my presence. So I did something else entirely. I straightened my shoulders and walked toward the porch, as if I'd just arrived, the broken glass crunching beneath my shoes. "I'm back early," I called out, my voice surprisingly steady. They were out of the Merlot. They sprang apart like guilty teenagers, though they hadn't been touching. When I stepped onto the porch, it was their expressions that gave them away, that split-second panic before composing their features into casual smiles. "Rachel." Mark recovered first, his handsome face arranging itself into a look of pleasant surprise at 45. He still turned heads, tall with dark blonde hair and laugh lines that seemed charming rather than aging. "My successful landscape designer husband, the father of my children. We were just talking about the family reunion next month." Jessica couldn't quite meet my eyes. She was 37, 3 years younger than me, with the kind of effortless beauty I'd always admired. Chestnut-colored hair, tall and slim without trying. We'd grown up together, shared secrets, been bridesmaids at each other's weddings. "Really sounded intense for reunion planning," I said, smiling pleasantly, heart hammering in my chest. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Mark's face. "Just trying to figure out sleeping arrangements with all the cousins coming." I nodded, setting down the remaining grocery bags. "I'll start dinner." "Jessica, would you mind helping me in the kitchen?" She followed me silently, like a scolded child. Once inside, I busied myself with vegetables, chopping with precise, controlled movements. "Rachel, she started. "Not now," I said quietly. "The kids will be back from swimming lessons soon." Our children, Mia and Ethan, 12 and 10, would burst through the door any minute with their usual chaos of wet towels and excited stories about their day. I needed to keep it together. Jessica hesitated, then began setting the table, her movements stiff and awkward. That night, I went through the motions of our anniversary dinner. I wore the emerald dress Mark had always loved, laughed at his jokes, poured wine, and excused Jessica's obvious discomfort as just a headache. I watched my husband of 15 years perform his role of devoted spouse while our children chatted about their day, completely unaware that their entire world was balanced on a knife's edge. It was the strangest feeling, like watching myself from outside my body. I kept thinking about the woman I'd been when I married Mark at 25. Brilliant but naive, so certain that love conquered all. The girl who'd put her promising career on hold to support his, who'd believed him when he said we'd take turns. Your dreams matter too. But that night, something crystallized in me. The years of subtle dismissals, of maybe next years for my career goals, of being the responsible one. While he got to be the fun parent, the foundation of our life together suddenly looked different under this new light. Less like a partnership, and more like a slow, careful erasure of the woman I'd once been. As I served the anniversary cake I'd picked up that morning, a ridiculous gesture. For a fleeting moment, panic bubbled beneath my calm exterior. What if I couldn't go through with this? What if he sensed my plan before I was ready? The fear was sharp and cold, tightening my chest until I forced myself to breathe evenly, to keep smiling, to keep playing the part he expected. I reminded myself I had to stay strong, not just for me, but for Mia and Ethan. Now I made my decision. This wouldn't be a typical story of a betrayed wife falling apart. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of my collapse, because there was something neither Mark nor Jessica knew. Something I discovered just 3 weeks earlier while organizing Mark's home office. Something that would change everything about the power dynamic in this little triangle they thought they were creating. I smiled as I cut the cake into 3 perfect slices. Make a wish, I said to Mark as he blew out the candles. If he only knew what I was wishing for. The next 2 weeks were an excruciating exercise in acting. I played the oblivious wife perfectly, busy with the children, preoccupied with work, conveniently giving Mark and Jessica opportunities to be alone. Together, I watched their nervous glances, their careful distance when others were around, their relief when I announced I'd be working late. I caught them in a dozen small betrayals. The way Mark's hand lingered on Jessica's when passing the salt, her wearing the perfume I knew he liked, the private jokes, the sudden hushed conversations when I entered rooms, the text notifications he now hid from me. One night, I pretended to fall asleep early and heard them whispering on the porch. I've never felt this way, Mark told her. It's like I've been sleepwalking through my life until now. The same words he'd said to me 16 years ago, almost verbatim. What about the children? Jessica asked. Kids are resilient, he responded, and I dug my nails into my palms. They adjust. And Rachel, she'll be fine. She's always been independent, focused on her career. The career I'd put on hold for him. The promotion I'd declined when Mia was born with respiratory issues and needed extra care. The business degree I finished at night while he worked late on important projects. I don't want to hurt her, Jessica said, though not convincingly enough. Sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind, Mark philosophized. Our marriage has been over for years, really. We're just going through the motions. She probably feels the same way, but doesn't know how to end it. I almost laughed out loud at his convenient rewriting of our history. The night before, I'd overheard them on the porch. He'd made love to me, whispered that I was beautiful, planned our anniversary dinner. What hurt most wasn't the betrayal. It was the ease with which he discarded 15 years of our life together. The casual way he dismissed my sacrifices, as if they'd been my preference rather than our agreement. The absolute confidence that I would fall apart without him. During those 2 weeks, I did my research. I spoke to my brother, an attorney, under the guise of helping a friend. I documented everything I found in Mark's office about the financial irregularities in his landscape design firm. The firm my family had helped finance when we first married. I took photos of the incriminating emails, the double books, the money siphoned to offshore accounts. The most painful discoveries weren't about the affair or even the financial fraud. They were the small betrayals over years that I found evidence of while going through his things. The vacation he'd canceled because of work emergencies, that coincided with charges at a resort 3 states away, the late nights at the office while location data showed him across town, the conferences that either didn't exist or had different dates than he'd claimed. I found a birthday card from another woman 3 years earlier with language too intimate for a casual friend, hotel receipts, unexplained expenses, a hidden email account. Each item felt like a fresh slap, each receipt and email like a cruel joke played at my expense. My hands trembled as I sifted through the files, tears burning my eyes, but refusing to fall. Rage and grief twisting together inside me until I could barely breathe. The more I uncovered, the more the walls of our home seemed to close in around me. Every familiar object turning foreign, tainted by his deception. The pattern was so clear. Now this thing with Jessica wasn't an isolated mistake or a sudden passion. Mark was a serial cheater, and I had been too trusting, too busy raising our children and keeping our life running smoothly to see it. I gave everything to them, and they discarded me like nothing. I whispered to myself one night, sitting alone in my home office, surrounded by evidence of my husband's duplicity. Jessica announced she was extending her stay for job interviews in the area. Mark was delighted, poorly concealing his excitement behind a facade of cousinly support. The children adored her, unaware she was helping destroy their family. One evening I overheard them making plans. After I tell her we should wait a few months before going public, Mark was saying, for appearance's sake. And the firm? Jessica asked. Her family's stake is minimal. Now I've made sure of that over the years. They won't be able to push me out. I almost revealed myself then. The urge to confront them was overwhelming. But I thought of Mia and Ethan, of the life I'd built, of everything that was at stake. This wouldn't be a confrontation fueled by emotion. This would be strategic. That night, Mark came to bed late, smelling of mouthwash that didn't quite mask the wine on his breath. He reached for me in the darkness, perhaps driven by guilt. Not tonight, I said. I'm exhausted. You're always exhausted lately, he complained, instantly transforming into the victim. We barely connect anymore, Rachel. I almost laughed at his performance, setting the stage for the dissolution of our marriage, building his case. Poor Mark with his emotionally distant wife. I'm sorry, I said, the words bitter on my tongue. Maybe this weekend we can make some time for us. I'd like that, he lied, and I felt his relief that I'd given him an excuse. The next day I found them together in his home office. They weren't touching when I walked in, but the energy between them was unmistakable. They'd been laughing, their faces flushed with the intimacy of shared secrets. Sorry to interrupt, I said pleasantly. I just needed to grab something. You're not interrupting anything, Mark said too quickly. Jessica was just helping me organize some client files. I nodded, noticing how Jessica couldn't meet my eyes, how her fingers nervously twisted the bracelet Mark had given her, the one I wasn't supposed to know about. Actually, I said, I'm glad you're both here. I've been thinking. We should do something special before Jessica leaves. A dinner party, maybe with some of our old friends. The panic that flickered across their faces was almost comical. That sounds lovely, Jessica managed. Great, I'll start planning. Maybe next Friday? I suggested, knowing they had already made plans to be together that night. Plans I wasn't supposed to know about. Friday might be difficult with my work deadline. Mark hedged. Oh, I thought that project was finished, I said innocently. You mentioned it was wrapped up last week. A flash of irritation crossed his face. There's been some revisions, he said. Well, let me know what works, I said lightly. I'm flexible. As I left the room, I heard Jessica whisper, She knows something. She doesn't, Mark assured her. She's clueless. I smiled to myself as I walked away. Let them underestimate me. It would make what came next all the more satisfying. While Mark and Jessica thought they were being clever, I was methodically preparing for what would come next. I'd always been the organized one, the planner, the one who thought 10 steps ahead, skills Mark had benefited from but never truly appreciated. But even as I laid out my strategy, doubt gnawed at the edges of my mind like a persistent ache. What if I was missing something? What if my plan crumbled, leaving me exposed and alone? The fear that I might not be strong enough to protect Mia and Ethan kept me awake at night, shadows on the ceiling stretching long with every worst-case scenario my mind conjured. I forced myself to bury those thoughts each morning, to put on the mask of calm determination. First, I contacted Lisa Chen, my college roommate and now a successful forensic accountant. Over coffee at a cafe far from our neighborhood, I showed her some of what I'd found. "This is serious, Rachel," she said, her expression grave as she flipped through the documents. "These aren't just accounting irregularities. This is systematic fraud." "I know," I said quietly. "I need to understand exactly what he's done and what it means for me and the kids." Lisa nodded. "I'll look through everything in detail, but Rachel, this could involve criminal charges. Are you prepared for that?" Was I prepared to see the father of my children potentially face legal consequences? The Mark I married would have been horrified at the man he'd become. I thought about my children, about the foundation of lies their home was built on. "I need to know all my options," I answered carefully. Next, I met with my brother James, who specialized in both family and corporate law. I brought him copies of everything I'd found, both the personal betrayals and the professional fraud. "Jesus, Rachel," he whispered, looking through the files in his office after hours. "How long have you known about this? About the affair?" "A few weeks." "About the financial issues?" "I started finding discrepancies about 3 months ago when I was helping organize his tax documents." I kept my voice steady. I thought it was just carelessness at first. James ran a hand through his hair. "This isn't carelessness. He's been systematically moving money out of the company, money that partly belongs to our family's investment. And these transactions," he pointed to several documents, "these could be construed as embezzlement." "What should I do?" I asked. "Document everything. Don't confront him yet. We need to secure your position and the children's future first." James looked at me with concern. "Are you okay? Really?" I gave him a small smile. "I'm not falling apart, if that's what you're asking. I'm angry, and I'm done being taken advantage of." While Mark believed I was obliviously going about my routine, I was working with Lisa and James to understand exactly what he'd done and what leverage I had. I also quietly consulted with a therapist about how to protect my children through what would come next. I began gathering my own financial resources. The small inheritance from my grandmother that Mark didn't know about, the freelance editing work I'd been doing that I'd kept in a separate account for the children's education. I'd told him, and he'd never asked questions. I reconnected with old colleagues, updated my resume, and quietly put out feelers about positions in publishing, the career I'd put on hold. One evening I received an email that made me catch my breath. An offer for an interview at a prestigious publishing house for an executive editor position. Meanwhile, I watched Mark and Jessica grow bolder, more careless. They thought I was so blind, so trusting, that they barely tried to hide anymore. The lingering touches, the meaningful glances, the transparent excuses to be alone together. One night I accessed Mark's laptop while he was showering. His password had been the same for years. Our anniversary date, ironically enough. What I found confirmed my suspicions. Emails planning their future, discussions about how to let me down gently, concerns about how his business might be affected. "Rachel's family still has connections that could hurt us professionally," he'd written. "We need to make this look like a mutual decision, like the marriage just didn't work out." "No one can know about us until enough time has passed," Jessica had responded. "What about the money? You said there might be issues." "I've been preparing for years," Mark assured her, "moving assets gradually. By the time anything happens, there won't be much for her to claim." My heart pounded so violently I thought I might faint, every word on the screen burning into my eyes like acid. Their cold, meticulous plotting stripped away any last shred of denial I'd clung to, leaving only a raw, seething fury that made my hands shake as I reached for my phone. The realization that they had been calmly planning my erasure, discussing my life, my children's future, as if I were an obstacle to be removed, filled me with a white-hot rage so intense I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from screaming. I took screenshots of everything, adding to my growing file. Then I sent an email to myself from his account, forwarding documents he thought were safely hidden. The next day I called the private school where both children attended and spoke with their counselor. "I'm reaching out preemptively," I explained. "My husband and I are having some difficulties, and I want to ensure Mia and Ethan have support available. I arranged for both children to begin seeing the school counselor weekly, establishing a support system for them before they would need it. I also secured all our important documents, birth certificates, property deeds, insurance policies, and made copies, storing the originals in a safe deposit box Mark didn't know about. I took inventory of all valuable items in our home, photographing jewelry, artwork, and antiques that had been in my family. Mark noticed none of this. He was too preoccupied with his affair, with his schemes, with his vision of a new life with Jessica. His arrogance made him blind to what was happening right under his nose. One evening he announced he needed to take a business trip over the weekend. "Of course," I said, smiling. "The children and I will be fine." Jessica suddenly remembered she needed to visit a friend that same weekend. After they'd both left, I took the children to my parents' home for a visit, then returned to the house alone. I spent hours going through every inch of Mark's home office, finding additional evidence of his financial misconduct and his plans for our divorce. In his desk drawer, buried under files, I found something that made my blood run cold. Divorce papers already drawn up. He'd been planning this for months, carefully constructing a narrative that would leave me with as little as possible while protecting his reputation and finances. That night, sitting alone in our empty house, I made my final preparations. I called Lisa and James, confirming they were ready. I contacted the detective James had recommended, sharing what we'd found about the financial fraud. I finalized the documents my brother had prepared for me. The pieces were all in place. When Mark returned Sunday night, tanned and relaxed from his weekend with Jessica at a beach resort, not the business conference in Denver he'd claimed to attend, I greeted him with a smile. "How was Denver?" I asked innocently. "Productive," he lied smoothly. "The client finally approved the designs." "That's wonderful," I said. "I have some exciting news too. I've been offered an interview for an executive editor position." A flicker of annoyance crossed his face before he composed it into a supportive smile. "That's great, Rachel, though the timing might be complicated with my current project." "I'm sure we'll figure it out," I said. "We always do." As he unpacked, I noticed the confidence in his movements, the slight smile playing at his lips. He thought he had everything under control. He thought he was the chess master, moving pieces around the board while I remained oblivious. Little did he know, I wasn't a pawn in his game. I was playing a different game entirely. The dinner party I'd insisted on hosting was set for Friday evening. Mark had tried repeatedly to change the date, but I'd already invited guests, including several of his important clients and business partners. Even Jessica couldn't find a plausible excuse to avoid it. I spent the day preparing everything meticulously. The house gleamed, the table was set perfectly, and I'd hired a caterer to prepare Mark's favorite dishes. I wore a new dress, elegant, understated, confident. As guests began arriving, I watched Mark and Jessica maintain their careful distance, playing their parts. Mark was charming as always, working the room, making everyone feel special. Jessica stayed mostly near my mother, playing the role of the devoted cousin. Midway through the evening, once everyone had finished dinner and moved to the living room for drinks, I excused myself and went to my office. I returned with a slim folder, walked to the center of the room, and gently tapped a spoon against my wine glass. "I'd like to make a toast," I announced, smiling as the room quieted. Mark looked at me with mild curiosity, completely unsuspecting. "First, thank you all for coming tonight. It means so much to have our closest friends and family here." I paused, looking around the room. "As some of you know, Mark and I will be celebrating 16 years of marriage next month." Murmurs of congratulation rippled through the room. "It's been quite a journey," I continued. "We've built a beautiful life together. A home, 2 amazing children, and of course, Mark's successful landscape design firm, which my family was proud to help establish." I noticed Mark's smile falter slightly. In fact, Mark has been so successful that he's been able to pursue other interests. I kept my voice pleasant, conversational, which brings me to why I really wanted everyone here tonight. Mark was now watching me intently, a warning in his eyes. "I've recently made some discoveries that I thought should be shared with those closest to us." I opened the folder in my hands. "Mark, would you like to tell everyone about your relationship with my cousin Jessica, or should I?" The room went silent. Jessica paled visibly, while Mark quickly attempted to regain control. Rachel, you're clearly upset about something. Maybe we should discuss this privately. Like you and Jessica have been discussing your future together privately? I asked mildly. Or perhaps like you've been privately manipulating the company finances for years? Mark's face hardened. You don't know what you're talking about. Actually, I do. I turned to the guests. I apologize for the dramatic turn of the evening, but I felt it was important that everyone understand exactly what's been happening. I handed a set of documents to Walter Griffith, Mark's primary investor, who was looking increasingly concerned. Walter, you'll find evidence there that Mark has been systematically diverting company funds to offshore accounts for at least the past 5 years. Walter began examining the papers, his expression growing grave. Rachel, stop this right now, Mark hissed, moving toward me. My brother James stepped between us. I wouldn't, he said quietly to Mark. There are 2 detectives waiting outside who are very interested in speaking with you about certain financial discrepancies. Mark looked from James to me in disbelief. You had me investigated. Your own husband? No, Mark. I simply found what you left for me to find in those divorce papers you'd been preparing. The ones where you claim our business has been struggling and assets are minimal. I kept my voice even. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that wasn't quite accurate. Jessica had begun edging toward the door, but my mother gently took her arm. I think you should stay for this, dear, my mother said firmly. I continued addressing the room. I've arranged for copies of all relevant documents to be delivered to each of the board members and investors first thing tomorrow morning. The authorities already have their copies. Mark's face had lost all color. You've ruined everything, he whispered. No, Mark, you did that yourself. I turned back to our guests. I'm deeply sorry about this unfortunate situation. Obviously, the dinner party is concluded. Thank you all for coming. As shocked guests began gathering their things, Mark grabbed my arm. You can't do this. Think of the children. I have thought of nothing but the children, I replied, keeping my voice low. They deserve better than a father who lies, cheats, and steals, who plans to abandon them while stealing their financial security. I was going to take care of them, he insisted. The way you took care of our marriage? I pulled away from him. The detectives are here to ask questions about the financial irregularities, not to arrest you, yet. Whether charges are filed depends partly on how cooperative you are. As if on cue, the doorbell rang. James went to answer it. This isn't just about the affair, is it? Mark asked, realization dawning. The affair was the last straw, not the first problem, I told him. You've been betraying me for years, financially, emotionally, in every way that matters. You'll regret this, he threatened. I'll fight you for everything. The house, the kids, everything. I smiled then, calm and certain. With what resources, Mark? Your assets are being frozen as we speak. Your partners are about to discover your fraud. Your reputation in this community is finished. The detectives entered with James, their expressions professional and neutral. Mr. Whitley, we'd like to ask you some questions about Whitley Landscape Design Group's financial activities over the past 5 years. As Mark was led to the study to speak with the detectives, Jessica finally approached me, tears streaming down her face. Rachel, I'm so sorry. I never meant. Save it, I cut her off quietly. You were my family. You stayed in my home, played with my children, all while planning to take their father away. There's nothing you can say that I want to hear. What happens now? She asked, her voice small. Now you leave. Tonight, your things will be sent to you. And you should know, those email exchanges between you and Mark discussing how to hide assets from me during the divorce, those have been shared with the authorities as evidence of conspiracy. Her face crumpled as the implications hit her. Evidence? You mean I could be implicated? Yes, I'd suggest you get a good lawyer. I stepped back. Goodbye, Jessica. As the last guests departed, looking shell-shocked, I sat alone in the kitchen. The house that had felt like a stage for Mark's performance now felt like mine again. There was a strange lightness in my chest, not happiness exactly, but liberation. When the detectives finally left 3 hours later, Mark found me still sitting at the kitchen island. He looked destroyed. His carefully constructed world collapsed around him. They're continuing the investigation, he said hollowly. Walter and the board are calling an emergency meeting tomorrow to suspend me. I simply nodded. How long have you known? He asked. About the affair? 3 weeks. About your financial manipulations? I started finding evidence months ago when I was organizing our tax documents, and you just waited. Planned all this? Yes, I said simply. I learned from the best, Mark. You taught me how to hide what I was really feeling, how to play the long game. Where am I supposed to go tonight? He asked suddenly, looking lost. I've booked you a hotel room, I replied, sliding a key card across the counter. You'll find the address on it. I'll have your things packed and sent over tomorrow. And Jessica? She's gone. I stood up. The children will be home from their sleepover at noon tomorrow. I'll tell them you had a business emergency. You have until Monday to figure out what you want to tell them about why you won't be living here anymore. Rachel, we're done talking, Mark. You'll be hearing from my attorney about the divorce. I suggest you find your own lawyer immediately. As he turned to leave, shoulders slumped in defeat, I added, Oh, and Mark, those offshore accounts you thought were so cleverly hidden? We found those too. The color drained from his face. That's impossible. Nobody knew. I've been your wife for 15 years. I know how you think. I know your patterns, your passwords, your habits. While you were busy planning your new life, I was documenting your old one. He stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. I never thought you were capable of this. That was your biggest mistake, I said simply. You never really saw me at all. A year passed like the turning of seasons, painful, transformative, necessary. The children struggled initially with their father's absence and the sudden changes in our lives. There were tears, anger, confusion. I arranged for them to have regular sessions with their therapist and maintained as much stability as possible in their daily routines. Mark faced both criminal and civil charges for his financial misconduct. The evidence was overwhelming, and he eventually accepted a plea deal that included restitution, a suspended sentence, and community service. His professional reputation was in tatters, his firm restructured under new leadership. Jessica moved across the country. I heard through family that she'd started over, chastened by her close brush with legal consequences and the complete rejection by our extended family. She sent a long letter of apology 6 months after everything happened. I read it once, then filed it away. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. As for me, I took the position as executive editor at the publishing house. After 15 years, I stepped back into my career with a hunger and focus that surprised even me. The work became a salvation, demanding, fulfilling, entirely mine. Today marks exactly 1 year since that dinner party. The house is quieter now, but peaceful. The children spend alternate weekends with Mark, who has rented an apartment nearby and is struggling to rebuild some kind of relationship with them. It's complicated, imperfect, but slowly healing. I'm sitting on the deck where I first overheard them, watching the sunset paint the sky in impossible colors. In my hand is a glass of the Merlot Mark used to favor. I've reclaimed it, like so many other things. My phone buzzes with a text from James, checking in as he often does, then another from my colleague about tomorrow's marketing meeting, then one from my mother confirming Sunday dinner. I'm surrounded by a network of support I didn't fully appreciate until I needed it. People often ask if I regret how everything unfolded. The public nature of the confrontation, the legal consequences for Mark, the inevitable gossip that circulated through our community. I don't. There's a particular power in refusing to be a silent victim, in turning private humiliation into public consequence. I didn't just survive Mark's betrayal. I ensured it defined him, not me. The children are adapting, growing. Mia has developed an interest in photography, capturing moments of beauty in unexpected places. Ethan has discovered competitive swimming, channeling his complicated emotions into physical discipline. They've learned earlier than I would have wished that adults are fallible, that love can break, but also that strength can emerge from broken places. I've changed too. The woman who once arranged her life around her husband's needs and ambitions now makes decisions based on her own compass. I date occasionally, but without urgency. I'm comfortable in this new version of myself, more direct, less accommodating, unafraid of conflict or judgment. Last week, I ran into Walter Griffith at a charity event. He studied me for a moment, then said something that stayed with me. Mark never realized what he had in you, not just a partner, but a force of nature. A force of nature. I like that. As the last light fades from the sky, I think about the papers I signed this morning, the final resolution of the divorce settlement. It's generous to Mark, more than my attorneys recommended. Not because he deserves it, but because I don't want resentment or bitterness to tether me to the past. I take a final sip of wine and go inside to check on the children. They're in the family room, arguing good-naturedly over a board game. They look up when I enter, their faces lighting with smiles that still contain traces of innocence, despite everything. "Mom, come play with us," Ethan calls. "Yeah, I need an ally. Ethan's cheating," Mia insists. "I am not. You're just losing." Their bickering makes me laugh. This is what remains after destruction. The possibility of joy, of connection, of moving forward. Sometimes people ask if I'm angry that Mark took so many years of my life before I discovered his true nature. I don't see it that way. Those years gave me my children. They taught me resilience, showed me my own strength, revealed who truly stands beside me when everything falls apart. As I join my children on the floor, accepting the game piece Mia hands me, I think about the lesson I hope they take from all this. It's not the betrayal that defines you, but how you rise from it. The house we live in is smaller now, but it's wholly mine. The life I'm building is entirely on my terms. And the heart that was broken has not just healed, it has expanded, grown wiser, become more authentically my own. This was never just a story about catching a cheating husband, it was about finally seeing myself. Dear friend, if you've made it here, thank you for walking this journey with me. Remember, what happens to us is never fully in our control. But how we respond, how we rise from heartbreak, is where our true power lies. The Stoics taught us that obstacles aren't just things to endure. They are paths to growth. Every betrayal, every loss, every crack in your heart can become a doorway to seeing yourself more clearly than ever before. If you're facing your own storm, know this. You are stronger than you think. And the courage you need is already inside you. Don't let anyone else's actions define your worth. Let them reveal the force you can become. You are not what breaks you. You are what you build from the pieces. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. It helps more than you know, and we'd love to have you join our community for more stories of strength, healing, and finding yourself again.